All right, Luca Nation. I'm telling you guys, we're doing this on a wing and a prayer, and I don't know how it's gonna work out. I really don't. I gotta be honest with you guys. But I prayed a little bit. I hope it works out. I hope the internet stays in check. It's been an extremely difficult week. So I hope today's episode is like the bookend, and we're back to regularly scheduled programming tomorrow. Cage,
That would be cool.
I'm ready to finish the week strong though.
I have an ongoing feud with Verizon for my Wi-Fi that's been out for approaching 36 hours, and still no timeline. You know, every time the time they say it's going to be fixed comes, they just push the time back 4 more hours. It's an amazing thing to be able to do that. Imagine it's like, hey, you know, we have partners, right? Don't worry, we'll deliver this at this time. That time comes, and it's like, we're just going to deliver it another time. We know this is supposed to be done.
What are the chances of that, Cage?
0.
Your internet's out, my power and my internet's out. That's kind of our kryptonite, right?
Yep.
If you think about it, our show relies. That's kind of our biggest kryptonite. So
I mean, you know, it's funny. It gets you thinking, right? Like, what was it like before all this craziness? What was it like before all this Wi-Fi? What was it like before all this craziness? It's actually going to be a fun lead into today's show, where I want to take it with the uncertainty of today, as opposed to, you know, the certainty of the past, right? You know, it will be an overarching thread for what we talk about, at least what I'm going to talk about today as well.
Okay.
If you want me to jump right in, I can.
Jump right in, and I'll recap everything at the end. I'm really excited for. There's some Stephen Curry game-worn sneakers that are IPOing next week, which I think people are going to be excited for. But go ahead, Cage, and I'll recap at the end. It'll be a little bit shorter of an episode.
No, I appreciate that. So, I mean, really what I've been thinking about, and you know, looking at the data here, and you watch, you know, the games that took place today, it's kind of been, you know, we started talking about this a little bit last week, but it's kind of been my overall investing strategy, you know, my turn, where I've turned in the last couple of months of where I'm going, right? You have a lot of people playing now, a lot of people who could be the next big thing. And yet, as you watch the games being played, when your investment money is tied to people who are currently playing now, right, there is significantly more risk, I believe. Sure, more upside, but significantly more risk when you have people who are out there playing. And I'd like to say success is already baked into a lot of their prices. Now, I'm not just talking about Patrick Mahomes, but we can definitely talk about Patrick Mahomes. But you saw today, all of the leading quarterbacks, all of the folks that people want to hang their hat on and bet on, right? From Brady, who lost to the Saints, and Brady's about as safe as you can get, not putting him in this category, but think about what kind of a Sunday it was, to Justin Herbert, who has been crowned the next big thing. You know, while Mahomes is falling, Herbert is ascending, and yet he lost today, a game that was supposed to be one that he won. And then you have the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase combo, right? Joe Burrow, if it's not going to be Herbert, clearly it's going to be Joe Burrow. And there are plenty of people out there.
I want to buy some Mike White. I'm going to buy some Mike White cards.
Mike White, yeah, exactly. So there are people out there like
this Jets team beat the Bengals and the Titans.
Yeah, different Titans team, but the Bengals have no excuse. But I mean, it just shows you, and that's your sentence. There is the point, right? There's a lot of parity in the league, but on any given Sunday. And that saying is that way for a reason, right? Any of these guys who we think are safe young investments can put up a stinker, right? I mean, there are people out there who thought it was Burrow. Burrow just lost to the Jets. I mean, there are a few embarrassing things out there. Losing to the Jets is just one of those embarrassing things you hang on your mantle. Like you could lose to teams, you shouldn't lose to the Jets. And yet you're right, the Titans lost to the Jets and now Burrow. But point being, you want to invest in Mahomes, you want to invest in these young quarterbacks, you want to invest in these Kyler Murray. Kyler lost to an old dog this week.
Does that apply cross sport? Like, would that apply to
Luka
cards?
Of course, and Luka's no exception, right? If we're talking about the stuff that's out there, right? Let's talk about Mahomes, right? Mahomes, the slide continues, right? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Mahomes hasn't played yet, and when trading opens up Monday morning, Mahomes is playing on Monday night, so we'll see what happens. I honestly happen to think that he has a get-right game, and the team has a get right game. Not everybody thinks that. I happen to think that, his performance on the field will be good. I don't know whether or not 1 week against a bad Giants team is going to reverse the trend. But if you look at just like his flawless RPA, down again. We talked about this, right? Down another 2% after being flat, down 5, down 2, down 2, down 1. The Immaculate 101, down almost 10% this week after being basically flat, down 5, and 2 in the prior weeks. But what's different is I don't want to say it's all bad, right? Because there is that upside, right? So if you pick the right one, not as easy. It's easier said than done, right? Because we're talking about who's the right one. We thought it was Herbert. Herbert lost. And one loss doesn't necessarily mean, you're out there, but it's just one of those things that gets thrown into the mix, right? Obviously, 1 loss, 2 losses, 3 losses. Look what happens to Mahomes. You're now on a multi-week drop on somebody who people thought was behind Brady, was one of these like safe investments, already an MVP, already a Super Bowl winner, potentially the next guy. And look what's happening to his cards. But flip side, up almost 28% this week was the Josh Allen Gold Prism, right? Probably the leader.
I would sell. I would
Me
sell,
too.
man. Do you agree with
I have
that?
a theory, by the way. I have a theory on that card.
Go ahead.
That card is that increase, I believe, is less about Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's a lot of it. He's going to be MVP. People think, I think the Gold Prism aspect of it also has a very big deal. I think that's a very big part of it, right? I think people are now trying to find those Gold Prisms more than they previously were. There are a lot of high-end investors looking for Gold Prisms. And that is one of those cards that, could be a potential buyout card because there's just not that many people who have Gold Prisms. And if it's going to be the Gold Prism of the MVP, the guy who's going to go far, it's one of those cards that it doesn't surprise me it had that kind of a run because I could see people investing in that thinking that's one someone might take off the market. I think it's a combination of Josh Allen and it's not an RPA. It's not think of, you've made this point so well. Look at how much stuff Mahomes has on Collectible. Look at how many cards there are out there. And the ones that aren't collectible, they're all over the place. There's one-on-ones everywhere. There's a $4 million one-on-one being purchased here. When we were at the National, somebody showed up with another Mahomes one-on-one with the shield on it. I mean, there just seems to be all these Mahomes RPA one-on-ones all over the place. There's not that many Gold Prisms, right? So there's 10.
Do you think there's going to be, as you're searching for we're just talking about quarterbacks here, you start thinking legendary quarterbacks like Manning. And I go on Collectible. There's not a ton of Manning on there. There's one game used helmet that's going to be trading soon, and that's it. I'm curious for Collectible. Do they get inquiries from their users to say, we want more of this or this or this or this player? Because I believe right now, and I think it would be cool if they could time it like this, if during a Monday Night Football, Eli and Peyton Manning kind of broadcast, they could IPO something that's really valuable to Manning. Right? Whether that's his card, a game-used jersey, a game-used helmet that's signed, whatever it is. I think a Manning IPO would do incredibly, incredibly well right now.
I think 100% right. In yesterday's episode, I talked about Manning, comparing him to Brady. The point that I think I'll make on this one is, especially in these higher-end stuff, when you're in season and you're talking about a quarterback or a Luka or any of these younger guys, you have to have an appetite for a little more volatility if that's what you're looking for, right? And people invest different ways, right? And people invest with some volatility and some blue chip, less volatility. Brady can lose like he did today. That's not going to tank his values. It probably won't make his values go up too much this week because people are not as certain that he's going to be the Super Bowl winner as they were last week and add to his thing. But if you look at what happened in the prior week on that Brady contenders basket, it's just been a consistent, 1%, 2%. This week was up another 2%. It's just a consistent, the prior 4 or 5 weeks, it's just been 2%, 2%, basically flat, 8%, 3%. It's with his performance, it's kind of been, a nice little consistent, I call it like a growth stack, right? It's been a nice consistent number. I will tell you, it doesn't always pan out that way. Brady's playing, so obviously it has something to do. Part of what I would say is and guys, I own one of these, so I'll make sure everybody is aware of this. It's not a play that I'm making today, but I happen to own one of these cards. But just in researching this, I looked at the Montana that's on Collectible, and that was also down this week, right? That was down this week as well. And I started thinking, I wonder why it's down. And I guess it's because people will compare those blue chips to what's going on now. Part of the reason I believe that vintage cards went up the way they did, why Michael Jordan's rookie went up the way that it did, and why, Jerry Rice and Joe Montana's cards went up the way they did. If you notice, they followed an increase in modern, right? People went after Luka, they went after Zion, they went after Patrick Mahomes. And then there was this, gotcha moment where it was like, oh, wait a second, all right? If Luka's worth this and Zion's worth this and Mahomes is worth this, we got to go back and right size. We got to now, it's like a price discovery you always talk about. Like, Montana can't be worth that. You know what I mean? If Mahomes is worth this, Jordan can't be worth that, and there was this whole like flight to vintage. So I guess I wasn't that surprised to see Montana also come down this week when I see Mahomes prices coming down the whole deal. Everything kind of works in tangent, but I'd be looking at a card like that Montana. I don't own any shares of it here. I actually happen to own one of those cards. A card like that, or Brady, because Brady, even though he's playing, is one of those consistent goats on the basketball, right? I'd be looking at Michael Jordan, right? He's not going out there and performing, rather than looking at these younger guys. One of the big picks that I made early on here was Michael Porter Jr. in the week that he got that big contract, and his card went up, right? Mm-hmm. And that was one of the worst performers this week, the Michael Porter Jr. cards. It really was. It was down tremendously. And you want to chat about Michael Porter a little?
I think it's not even just about Michael Porter Jr. I think some of the prospects have tiers, right? And goats have tiers and play like. So I mean, Michael Porter Jr. is on like the riskiest of the riskiest assets, and it's funny how quickly people jump off them, right? I'd say Luka's still a prospect, but he's like kind of a tier A prospect. Michael Porter is a tier B or tier C or tier D, wherever you want to put him, but people jump off him way quicker, right? They're willing to put some money on him before the season starts. But if he's not performing in the first 5 games, remember, it's 5 games.
5 games.
People jump quickly. And I'll tell you, you'll look at the Mavs. Luka's not playing incredibly well in terms of statistics. The team's winning. They're not playing a ton of great teams right now, but people have a longer leash with some of these other guys. Even with Zion, right? There's not as much of a sell-off as you would think with him. So it's just interesting to put these prospects. They also have different tiers. So, I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. is another one that if he doesn't have a good start to the season, people are going to jump off him quick.
Yeah, because he has no track record. I mean, that's the thing. So I'll tell you something that was a little surprising to me, right, is we talked last week about this, and I'll go right back to it because there's no reason not to. When there are comps, I understand that comps are just one thing, right? It's just one sale, one recent sale. It doesn't mean that the same asset on Collectable should just immediately pin to that sale. Remember what we're talking about here. It's not a liquid stock. It's not something that's traded over and over again at that point in time. It is one comp. It's one auction result. So it's fair for something to not automatically, boom, just pin to whatever that result is. But I'm a little surprised by two. One guy you just talked about, one guy I just mentioned. So the Luka Prism Blue, the PSA 10 Blue Luka Prism, right? That had the PWCC sale of $78,000. So we talked about how it's probably going to go up a little bit because it was only like $58,000 here and it was almost $80,000 on PWCC. So I was a little surprised it only went up 5% and change to a $62,000 market cap. That's something I'd look at just trading wise, because what that means is that it's still over 20% below what the most recent comp was. And that is as far as liquid cards go, that is a liquid-ish card. Like there are other ones out there. You can see other sales. You can see other items. Now, here's the fun part, right? I don't know whether the PWCC one was paid for. You know what I mean? Like if I were looking to invest in that one, I'd do a little follow-up research, follow-up with PWCC.
You know how, Paige, you know how there's like the right before season sellers?
Yep.
This to me is kind of like that last of the tricklers. Like I would imagine that if in next year monthly auction or even in a week or two, I would actually say that Lucas Blue wouldn't sell for as high as it did before, right? Because you always see this like boom in the first week before season and the first week during season, right? People are still kind of getting into their investments and they don't mind overpaying a little bit. I think if this Blue auctioned off, in a month, I think it's a $65,000 card. I think that it's fair where it's at on Collectible. I think it's a little bit higher on PWCC than it maybe should be.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right. We've definitely seen that. What I've noticed is before season is usually the high, and once you get into it, people are like, all right, they only stay high if somebody gets out of the gate really hot. So you're probably right, because while Luka's team looks good, it's not like he's being a world beater right now. He's not putting up 35 points, 10 and 10 every game, which is what people have come to expect with his prices. This is more of just it is lower, which to me provides kind of like a net, right? Like this is one where you're right. Like 62, 65 might be correct, right? It's lower than the most recent comp. I think there's less downside than room for upward mobility, especially with that comp that's there. And if he does happen to go on a run here where he does Luka things, which he hasn't done in the first 5 or 6 games, and he puts up a couple 40-point games in a row, then you're sitting in it with low downside and potential upside. Flip to that is not one where the guy's performance is going to be out there at all. But we also talked about this last week, and I'll bring it up again because, again, same reason, right? I was surprised it didn't move as much just because this is not liquid. There's not a lot of them out there, and it was the same thing. Remember I talked last week about the Michael Jordan Exquisite Numbers patch auto? Golden sold for 85.2, and the one on Collectible is right around 60, just over 60. Well, this week it only went up 3%, and it's sitting at 64.6 against an 85 comp at Golden. That's more than 30%. I mean, that's about 30%. It's a 30% increase, right? So 30% of 64.
Do you think the psychology of a trader on Collectible or any of these fractional sites, do you think that they're more likely to buy Prism cards based kind of like the Prism, which is more of a – it's harder to value patch autos. It always has been, right?
Yep.
Do you think an investor who's on this end, right, you want to hold the patch auto, you want to see the patch auto, right? That's kind of one that you want to have a tangible item off of.
Yep.
A blue Prism PSA 10 of Luka isn't that much cooler in person than it is on its screen. How much do you think that plays into it, if at all? It might not at all.
I think it does. I mean, listen. So I try to think of a lot of reasons why a card like these, and the RPA especially. You're right. I mean, and they're not all the same, right? The patch is different. You name it. There's a million reasons. I try to think of it, and the first thing that I thought of with cards like the Luka, which is 78,062 on Collectible, $85,000 Jordan Exquisite, which is 65 on Collectible. They're two cards that are right in the same wheelhouse. And part of what I thought about was, maybe these are cards that are not in that unaccessible range that Fractional works with. You know what I mean? They're not that Curry, that Curry RPA rookie that's a couple $100,000. They're not that 52 tops mantle, ones where you're not going to be able to buy. Like, people may look at these and say, you know what? If I flip a little bit here and there, if I turn my stack into this and I do well this next, these are cards I can actually approach myself and buy one. You know what I mean? Maybe I was starting to think like, okay, maybe these are just not in a range where people will pay a premium or pay close to pinned comp for it. But then what's funny about that is then I look at the Rock. Remember that PSA perforated Rock card, which was way down, and comps all over the place. That one sold at Golden for 46.8, and this week it almost pinned exactly there. It closed at 45.4. Just basically right at where it was, up 26%. So it's funny how some of them don't move in tangent with it, but for that particular one, it was like the Golden comp, boom, let's move this price.
I think people forget about that card.
They do. Or they don't believe it.
They don't hear about it. Like, it's not someone that's in culture. Guys, I mean, unless Cage, if you have anything else, I have one singular play.
The only one to talk about, I mean, for play wise, is I was a little surprised about what happened with the 03 Exquisite Box. Right, we had that huge sale in Golden auction, with the 23 out of 99 LeBron Exquisite. We talked about this last week, right? And I was a little bit surprised that this week that 03 Exquisite Box moved down. Actually, its market cap is 154,000. You remember the case, the 3-box case? So we talked about there being a premium for the case and the whole 9 yards, but the 3-box case sold for just under $1 million, a $332,000 per box price, meaning that the Exquisite Box on Collectible is still less than 50% of the price of a box per case. So 332 as part of a case, 154,000. I was a little surprised by that. And, you know, that's one of those things that you don't really get an opportunity to buy into, you know, Exquisite '03 box that often. I could see a lot of people in the future being interested in that. You know, it sounds like a really cool break, you know, to get into if you're a breaking company, whether it be, you know, Star Stock or, you know, Whatnot or Loop or any of these companies that are out there.
It'll
Like,
be a cool partnership, right? Like just for one time, like let's break this box.
yeah, you know, and where would
Collectible
you go?
houses it.
Yeah, where would you go to
Where would-
get one? You know, either you buy a case for $1 million, or wow, let's go to Collectible and put a buyout offer in on the one that's half the price of the most recent comp. So it's just one of those things that I was looking at. I was a little surprised that it didn't move, you know, anywhere near where we were. And yeah, man. I mean, as far as like plays, I'd love to hear it. I did you see the Tiger Woods putter
So
this week?
that's the only one. That's my play. So
Shoot.
remember, I took a day trading class, like kind of in January of this year, to learn something new. We talk about catalysts, right? So like an auction is a catalyst, right? If it sells for higher or lower, golden, it will move the price on collectible in some way, right? Another catalyst is an accredited publication or an accredited investor coming out and tweeting something. Like you see this when Elon Musk tweets about Dogecoin or Bitcoin hilariously. It actually moves the price. And what we saw this kind of shows you a little bit of like long tail of like really specific niche influencers, right? So who reads the Golden Age Golf magazine? Nobody, other than the people who probably invest in golf stuff, right? And who are diehard golf fans. So what you saw here is the Golden Age Golf magazine suggested, and it's kind of interesting because there's not a lot of this out there, that a Tiger Woods tournament used putter in the wake of all of this memorabilia, game use stuff. You know, Tom Brady's football 600 touchdown is 500,000. They're probably getting on that trend and saying, "Hey guys, this putter might be $1 million putter." And what you saw from that is a lot of movement. So it went up 36% this week. I think you missed the bulk of the move, but I wouldn't be surprised if this week was another one of those 20, 25, 30, 40% weeks. Uh, I think what's so interesting with memorabilia is it's really difficult to discover the price of it. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're going to be seeing with this putter. Is it 730K? Is it 800K? Is it 900K? It's one of those that I think it might go up higher than it should. And you have an opportunity to kind of day or week trade this, right? So I could see it going from 730 to 900 back to 825. So I still think there is a bit of the move. And that would be my play. I'll take a look at this putter with this news of it's $1 million putter.
So the only play that I would, you know, that bring, I mean, we talk about plays and we talk about things that are undervalued, just something to look at. You know what I love is now that they have basically like, you know, market hour trading, you know, people don't like to hold over a weekend, right? This is always a profit taking Friday before the closing bell and the whole deal. So I am not a hockey expert, guys, and we haven't given hockey much love, you know, in our analysis, right? But I do know who Sidney Crosby is, right? And I do know that published last week, there was a $200,000 buyout offer for the Crosby Cup RPA basket that's on Collectible that was rejected, right?
That's
And
interesting.
and so basically what the owners of this are saying is it's worth more than $200,000 to them. But here's where it gets fun, right? On the week, it was up 33.3% to a market cap of 165.6, which is still a pretty nice jump up to the 200,000. It would still have to increase 20% to get to 200,000. So it means it's still below what the buyout that was rejected. But here's the fun. It looks like it was trading right at that 200,000 until the end of trading, where somebody or a couple people, or whatever it may be, sold at the last minute and dropped the price down, which should show you the liquidity of it, right? It should show you, you know, hey, people are jumping out at the last minute, take this thing down from 200 to 165.6. Clearly, somebody didn't want to hold this. Somebody wanted to take their profit. They were happy with the 33.3% based on that buyout, and they you know, so this was something that was trading at that $200,000 mark, and then closed at 165.6. It's something to keep an eye on, because if the holders rejected this buyout at 200, then what they're saying is they're willing to hold, and they're definitely going to be holding at 165. So there's some room there in that Crosby Cup RPA basket to take a look at. Obviously, hockey's back as well. Sidney Crosby is, as far as people are playing right now, about as safe an investment as you can get.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is he past this time? Is he past his time or no?
I would say he's probably on the down slope of his career, but he's still really good. He's still really good. Yeah. Nobody would call him young.
Sure.
Nobody would call him young, but he's still really, really good. And I mean, his cards, hockey's just one of those areas where we could do 4 episodes on, right? Hockey everybody talks about soccer and wrestling and the whole deal. Hockey just, the cards in hockey, they haven't gotten much in the way of love, and that might change. So, but yeah,
I think Jay Lee's going to do a good job talking hockey, guys. We try not to talk about things we don't know. Let me just wrap up with this, guys. Sure. Next Sunday, Steph Curry, 2012-13 Nike Player exclusive game worn sneakers, IPOing, which is super cool, and 2 Mickey Mantles this week. Some of his older years, 1969 and 1965. So
69 is his last Topps card. So it's pretty awesome. It's a cool card. It's like bookend. People like that when they do the runs.
People like that.
And it's a cool card, too. That 69 card is a cool-looking card.
So there it is, guys. There's another episode, a little shorter. Thank you for bearing with us. It's been a little bit of a crazy week here, but you guys are the best audience out there, one of the most supportive. You guys call us, you reach out, you give us love, you're very understanding. So we appreciate it. Hope we did a good job with this collectible episode. If you have any questions, concerns, our DMs are always open. Please like, subscribe, share, smash the like button. Smash the share button, smash the subscribe button.